Caddis Maximus here, this time with just a quick review and a little demonstration of these Harbor Freight high-speed steel tap drill and countersink set. Sometimes they call them tap drill and deburr set. So these have been around for a few years, but they're relatively recent. They are made out of high-speed steel. The first ones I actually saw were from DeWalt, and I have an Imperial set, but I saw at Harbor Freight that they have both fractional and they had this metric set, so that's why I went ahead and picked these up. They're on sale for $13. They're definitely not made by the same people who make the DeWalts, although for $13, these are actually pretty good. They include a little bit set, number 1 and number 2 Phillips, some posi drive Phillips, a couple little slot heads, and then an interesting little short quick change adapter. They should have just charged $10 and just sold the 6-piece set. There's no real reason for them to include these extra bits besides to make the product more expensive. Bigger case, more labeling, extra bits when they're not entirely related to these. These are usually just sold by themselves. Anyway, these things are handy. They are for essentially sheet metal and thin metal only. They aren't for hardened steel or very strong steel, such as, you know, truck chassis and that kind of stuff. They will do the operation in those harder steels, but they wear out pretty quickly. And when they break off, it's real unfortunate because they're near impossible to get back out of the hole. You usually have to use a carbide drill bit to attempt to drill it out if these break off. And once they start dulling, they tend to break off right about midpoint during the threading operation. So even if the drill tip it gets dull, most of the torque is applied when it's actually cutting the threads, and hence that's where it breaks. So that's something to make note of. But these things really are pretty interesting. This case isn't so bad, but they are. And they do laser etch them, which I like, but you can see that they just have a standard split tip drill point, which actually this one doesn't have the greatest grind on it. You can already see that. But the idea is that they drill, and as soon as you get through the thin cross section, these are about 1/4 inch would be the maximum. They hit this long taper on this 2-flute tap, and then it taps through, and then when it's finished tapping, you have another diameter up here. When it passes through to the top, it hits this little bevel, and that kind of gives you a little bit of a chamfer and prevents you from going through. So it's kind of 2 birds in 1 stone, because after you finish threading, it's real hard to stop threading and then like stop pushing on the drill. So the thread goes through, and then you bump the top of the hole for a second, and that's when you know to stop. And that little bump against the chamfer slightly countersinks and cleans up the threaded hole, and then you just unthread it and back it back out. Another obvious thing is if you attempt to tap something that is thicker than the drill flutes, then what ends up happening is you're drilling through, and then the threads of the tap cutting portion start to engage before the tip of the drill has made it through the material, and then they just instantly break. As soon as that happens, as soon as the threads engage, they try to jam the bit in real fast, and then boom, it just takes a big chip and just snaps off. And so I do want to mention that if you do use these on too thick a material, you'll just end up with a broken piece of high-speed steel in it. But they really can be fast and nice when you need to thread lighter gauge sheet metal or attach paneling to square and box steel, those kind of things. Drill and tap, angle iron. They're definitely pretty handy, and it was pretty nice to find those Harbor Freight ones. Now we have some DeWalts here. Here we are. And actually, let me pull this back out so we can compare them. The DeWalts are quite a bit different, you can see, where the Harbor Freights, they do have a ground hex shank, but it just isn't as smooth. And if you look at the shank on the DeWalt, it has real nice sharp edges, which I do like. They just seem to be a little bit nicer quality. The other thing about the DeWalts is they're actually quite a bit longer. These can go through potentially 3/8 of material before running the same issue as the Harbor Freight. So that would be one obvious difference, is if you get a professional grade like this DeWalt, you can go through much thicker material, but they are quite a bit more expensive. But at least with that expense, you're getting a tool that's usable in more situations because it has that increased depth, as well as finer machine work. So I just wanted to compare them against both of these. Now, the interesting thing about the DeWalt's is that they are impact rated. And there's actually a few YouTube videos where these things seem to work actually pretty well when using an impact driver. I just don't know how these Harbor Freights are going to hold up under the same situation. But let's go ahead and take since I do have the packaging, you know, they quick design, drill and tap and deburr, saves time, single piece, taper design, hardened high-speed steel, steel, brass, and other soft materials, and basically the same thing on the back. What I was going to mention is this is properly done. These are made in China. Metric. But then when I got the case, and we know that this is the good metric one, they did have like a big bubble label, kind of an expensive label. I ended up putting that on my toolbox. And we can see that they are properly metric. We just looked at that. But when we look at the back, it's a little interesting. So I have to put it on the, when I put it in the part number description, I have to double check that, because this part number and what's on this package are indeed the same. But it says SAA drill, tap, and deburr set. So that was kind of a funny little error. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a quick look. I kind of like the case, but take a quick look at how these work. And I'm actually going to pull out the bits on this side and end up putting the DeWalt's in here, which will be nice. Then I'll have both the metric and the fractional in the same case. So that was part of the secret reason I bought these Harbor Freights. Let me go and get set up real faster, and we'll do a quick demonstration. Okay, it looks like I got a good angle here. I have just a piece of mild steel. I do want to try to take care of these. You really should use some oil and lube, but this is just a simple little test, so I'm not going to do that on this one hole. But this is a 6x1, 6mm diameter, 1mm thread pitch, and I actually have a nice little socket head cap screw, so we'll see how that fits. And this cross section of steel right here, this is maybe 1/16 of an inch, or maybe a little bit less. I can't remember what gauge that is, but this would be like the perfect type of metal where you have some kind of, and in my situation, oftentimes it's metal panels and box structures that are around machine tools, CNC machines, etc. And the metal tends to be around this thick. On a lot of sections, it's either, you know, real thick steel, or they're just screwed to other pieces of sheet metal. And so that's one impetus to getting these, is really nice when one of those screws strips out, where you can just drill a hole next to it and have it be threaded and tapped all in one quick motion. And we'll use my little dewalt here. Almost got this in here. So the crux of these bits is the fact that the drill tip, say on this 6mm drill, wants to spin pretty fast. This drill tip probably wants to spin around 2,500 to 3,000 RPM. There's actually a cutting speed calculation for drilling operations, which is a variable number known as cutting speed. Standard steel would be 90, but you know, aluminum would be 200 or 300. Chromoly steel would be 75 times 90 divided by 3.8. And that will give you an idea of actually the optimal speed for running a drill bit. It's real surprising. A lot of people run big drills too fast and little drills way too slow. And a simple little calculation, you'll have much better drilling results. So I'm going to choose a mid speed, because the tapping operation wants to be run much slower than the drilling speed, a tenth of it. And so that's always the crux with one of these is, should you just run at a high speed, say 2,000 RPM on this drill, which would still be a bit slow for the tip, and then, you know, risk having some issues and running too fast with the tap, or running really slow and not effectively getting through the hole. So I'm going to choose the middle speed on this DeWalt. One nice feature about it, which is going to be 1,300 RPM, and we'll go ahead and see how this works. Let me zoom in and give you a little demonstration here. Alright, here we go. Let's just do a quick demonstration. I'm going to make sure I keep this drill nice and straight. I'm going to go to low speed to back it back out. You can see that was not so bad. The issue, I think, with these is really backing them out without cross-threading. In this case, I'm going to do this, make it easier on myself. I'm going to go ahead and manually back this out. It's real easy to get it cross-threaded when you want to back them out, and that's one Achilles heel of these things, is you finish drilling and then you just want to reverse and bang it back out, and it's real easy to get this thing, started in the wrong spot, and you just end up destroying and cutting off the threads that you just made. And that's one thing to be aware of, is you do have to be careful when you remove these. But it was a pretty smooth operation, seemed to work pretty nice. Get out of there. There we go. Just a second. Let me go ahead and get this piece out of here. Here we are. Let's take a close look at this, a real close look. I can zoom in a bit more. There's the threads. They actually don't look too bad. I wonder if I can zoom in a whole lot more. There we go. I got a lot of zoom now. They're a little chunky. I should have used cutting fluid. That would have helped just a little bit. But we can see this isn't the worst. A little bit of flashing on the back side of the hole, but surprisingly it's not bad. As the tap goes through, it kind of gets rid of that little bit of metal, the little burr that happens on the back side. But, for a Harbor Freight integrated drill tap, that's really not so bad. If we take a look at the tool, it seems to be just fine. It was just fine on mild steel. So I guess this would be the test of the true, is how does this thread in here? Oh, that thread's in there perfectly. Excellent. And a little loose. That may be a little tighter. I think they kind of err on the side of over grinding these bits just to make sure all the fasteners thread in there. This could be a slightly undersized fastener, but socket head cap machine screws tend to be pretty well made. So the threads are a little loose. The tolerances on these bits aren't going to be perfect, but it's just fine. And as far as how fast and easy that was to make that hole, they're really not a bad bit set if they just weren't so expensive. I will mention that they are a lot cheaper than the more professional brands, but like these dewalts here, they tend to leave a little bit better threads. They're a little bit tighter. So one nice thing about these Harbor Freights, besides being able to find metric ones, which seem to be nowhere else, is the fact that you don't feel so bad if you do break one. Another thing to mention is there's no mention of any warranty on the packaging of these. So I do not believe these are lifetime warranty. You don't get to just blow out an unlimited number of these and just keep on replacing them Harbor Freight. I'm sure that wouldn't be possible. Anyway, that was just the end of a quick review and demonstration of these Harbor Freight integrated tap drill and deburring bits. I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. I really appreciate everybody subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed and enjoy my content, please do subscribe. Okay, till next time, Catus Maximus out.